CPAC Chairman Matt Schlapp joins me.
Great to be with you, Greta.
Great to be. You know, the Congressman Massie thing, besides the fact he was snarky about Israel, I mean, that was obvious. 10 points.
Yeah, I look at all this and I say, Senator Cassidy in Louisiana, he voted to preserve Obamacare. Most of these Republicans who Trump has targeted, they've been politically stupid, I would say. And maybe it's conviction, as you talked about, but they've been politically stupid and they were vulnerable. And then they did the other, they crossed the Rubicon or the third rail. Then they publicly kind of chastised Trump and they earned his opposition and they went down. But
well, wait a second, let me just have fun. Cassidy also voted to convict at the impeachment.
Well, yeah, which you brought up, which was so stupid.
That's probably a death penalty offense with Trump.
So stupid, and as we know, the charges for both of the impeachments, nobody would think that anything like that would stand up in a real court of law, not to mention the Senate. But look at all those state senators that he beat in Indiana. They made themselves vulnerable. I looked at the CPAC ratings. They were all kind of like high 70s, maybe got to 80. If you're a C as a Republican, the base of your party is going to say you can do better.
The Massie thing, though, 10 points is not just a little bit. That was really a message. That's why I used that mowing down thing.
Yeah. Well, you got to give Trump a lot of credit. The first thing I'll say is this idea of two-term split, it's quite potent. Trump's not your normal 6-year president like George W. Bush was. 6 years, or Obama, 6 years in, they get very unpopular. People can cross them at their will. Having two separate terms, boy, it shows that Trump is a comeback king, and his political power is much more potent than presidents that seem to put 2 four-year terms back to back.
How do you reconcile it with Iran and the companion high gas prices, which is rubbing a lot of people the wrong way?
I would tell President Trump this if he was sitting here with us, which is you also can't defy gravity. There are certain rules to politics, even if it's not personal. But it comes down to the pocketbook. And, gas prices are hard to control when you're trying to denuclearize Iran. So I get the fact that he believes one principle trumps the other, which is he'd rather have lower gas prices. So, he ought to move to these other affordability questions, like the affordability of housing. There are steps I believe his administration can take immediately to fix that concern that the rent is too damn high, right? And these other questions of affordability. But look, presidents, no matter how popular they are, it's hard for them to maintain that popularity if the impression is individually your purchasing power, the pocketbook issues aren't working for you. They have time to fix this.
Well, I don't know. I oftentimes think that I don't know if presidents, not just this one, but anyone, realize so much the pocketbook issues because they don't go to the grocery store, they don't fill their car with gas, and so they don't have any sort of real sense of what it's like.
Remember George H.W. Bush famously went to the grocery store and he was like, "What's that?" Well, it was a scanner. It was like the first,
right.
It made it seem like he
scanner.
was out of touch. Trump doesn't come into this with a great advantage because he's maybe the wealthiest president we've ever had.
But he does know workers. He's walked those construction sites. He does know those.
I think as one of the wealthiest presidents, he's actually more connected to everyday people than anyone. But you're right. When you get into the White House, you can get into a bubble. The difference here is I think President Trump understands that the economy is going to determine the outcome of the election. And I think that's why they're ready to hit the road and show that the big, beautiful bill and all of its components, which they need to talk about every day, because even people like you and me forget what was in that bill. Was so massive.
When you mentioned the big, beautiful bill, I was thinking to myself, like, well, what do I get out of that? What do the American people
They should act like
I can't even remember what was in it at this point.
The problem is his legislative aides are all like, well, we passed it over a year ago. Don't worry about that. Just talk about what's in it. What's the medicine?
But what's in it that we've gotten? I mean, can you name something? Like
tons of stuff. First of all, all the taxes, right, are in there. Most of the bill was about getting rid of regulations, which is bringing in trillions of dollars into our economy. It's just the medicine has to kick in, right? It kicks in a little bit more every month. Iran was a blip on all this because gas prices took center stage. But I think he can make the case that was for a bigger principle. We don't want a jihadist government being able to, send a nuke to Europe.